Hi, and welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. Well, what I want to give today is my pre election expectation. I'm not going to call it a prediction. I don't think I want to dignify it by that name because I think there are still so many things that could possibly happen. But what I'm going to do is look at what I expect based on the polling, based on the history, of poll numbers in key states, and based on what would happen if things do not interfere to systematically interfere with what the polls were saying on November 2nd and the days that were leading up to November 2nd. So let us get right to it. Here is a basic map. Let me share the screen for you. Okay, I filled in a map and I've used the interactive election map from ABC to do this. You'll notice there are many states in blue and many states, in red, and then there are states in gray. And the states that are in gray are states that I did not want to characterize because I consider them the true battleground states at this time. Now, I should say here, first of all, to begin with, I wouldn't consider Pennsylvania a battleground state simply based on its polling, but it's gotten a lot of attention from Trump and from the campaign. They obviously are mobilizing lawyers to try to freeze the results in Pennsylvania and prevent those results from getting fully counted. That's the state they've been focusing on. I don't think the same threat exists in quite a number of other states for a number of reasons, including the fact that in some states they can't really count on the fact that the late polls would necessarily be biased against them or towards them. But in Pennsylvania, they're pretty sure that the late votes that are coming in that are counted after Election Day would be heavily Democratic, so they're looking to freeze those. So for that reason, I've been considering it as a battleground state on a different basis from the others, using solely the polls to characterize the others as battleground states. But Pennsylvania, I'm considering both the polls and the expectation that something may happen to interfere with the ballots that arrive after Election Day. So there we are. Those are the things I was considering. Now you can see that there are 7 of these battleground states. There's Texas, Iowa, Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, and also Florida. So what this comes down to is what are my expectations for those states. But before I start with the expectations for those states, you should notice that the way I've characterized everything else already leaves us with a situation where Joe Biden has 271 electoral votes and Donald Trump 125 electoral votes. That's because I gave one district, I gave the Nebraska second, but to Joe Biden. That's the Omaha district. It's fairly close, to Iowa. It's urban. Kara Eastman, is running there. I I figure Biden has a good chance there. I think he's been running ahead there. So I characterized it for him, and this means that he gets an electoral vote out of that. I think the whole of Maine is going to go for Biden, all the districts in Maine, because I think he's running ahead there too. And so I gave him, I gave him one of the electoral votes in Maine too. Uh, there are two votes in Maine that could possibly be counted separately. I gave both of those to Joe Biden. Okay, there was another assumption I made that I want to make clear. I've looked, at Arizona and what has been going on there over time in terms of polling averages since May or something like that. And that state has been consistently for Joe Biden. It has never crossed over at all. He now is kind of at a low point in that state in terms of the lead, but it's a lead still of 2.6%. And even though it's in the margin of error, I still believe that since he's never been lower than 2.6% since he took the lead in that particular state, it's very, very unlikely that he's going to be beaten in that state, or that he has been beaten, of course. So I've characterized Arizona. So the reason why I've got 271 is I gave him the 11 electoral votes, of Arizona, and also the Nebraska 2nd, and also those districts, in Maine that could possibly be allocated some other way, but that based on their performance so far, I don't see that is happening. Especially given the general strength of Biden, in the New England area, I think the whole of Maine is going to go for Biden about this time. So he got 13 votes out of that. Without those 13 votes, he would have only 258 going into the battleground states. Okay. So there are a couple of other things that I want you to look at. First, I want you to look at closing times, because I think that closing times are going to be important. So here's a guide to closing times in the various states. Eastern closing times, 6 p.m. Eastern. Indiana starts to close then. Kentucky starts to close then. They continue a little while before they start to give all the votes, because parts of Kentucky is under Central Time. Indiana the same. And the 6 p.m. closing is for local time in both of those states. So they'll take a little longer to begin to for us to begin to get a characterization for those states. But at 7 p.m., we have Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Vermont, and Virginia all coming in. Florida and Georgia, are among the swing states. So we're going to begin to get results out of those two states very, very early in the evening. At 7:30, North Carolina, another swing state, is going to close. And Ohio is going to close. So we're going to start getting results from two more of those swing states. So we're already talking about 4 of the 7. Is it 4 of the 7 or? Oh no, Georgia is coming in also. Let me just review that again. Make sure I have it right. But Florida and Georgia, and North Carolina, and Ohio, all in by 7:30 Eastern Time. And we're going to begin to get results from those particular swing states. Okay. Then we don't get any results from any more swing states until Pennsylvania, which comes in, 8 o'clock. Now, we already know, though, that the absentee ballots are going to be late in Pennsylvania because they're not allowed to begin to count them. They may not even begin to count them until November 4th. So Pennsylvania is going to be late for that reason, but we're going to begin to get some early results in Pennsylvania in spite of that. And we're going to get those results fairly early. So that's the fifth of the swing states. Only 2 more swing states left. And we have Texas closing at 9 p.m. Eastern, which is local time 7 p.m. And Arizona, which we are certainly going to take a look at, also closing at 9 p.m. Eastern. So where is Iowa, the final swing state? So they close at 10 p.m. Eastern. We'll begin to get some of the results from those. Now, as the results come in, there are counties in each of these states that are viewed by the networks on the basis of a lot of statistical analysis as counties that indicate how the rest of a particular state is going to go. So you can get very early projections that are generally reliable based on what the indicator counties do. So we have to keep that in mind as well. We may get extremely early results in Florida based on the indicator counties. And we could get quick results from Iowa based on indicator counties in Iowa too, even though it's a close election. By 10:30 or so, we could find that things are over, in Iowa, even though the race is close in that particular state. So then, of course, we have the 11 p.m. Eastern closing, of the West Coast of California, Oregon, and Washington, and Idaho. And at 12 a.m., Hawaii closes, but Hawaii is not in doubt. It's not a swing state. Alaska is not in doubt. That's not a swing state either. So you have to keep these closings in mind. Now I want to show you something else. Where is my... Hang on a second. Back to where I was here. Okay. I want to share this window with you at this point. Let me see if I've got it. Yes, I do. So you'll notice that now let me make sure I've got this. Yeah, I do. Okay. So here are the 7 swing states. We have North Carolina with 15 electoral votes and a margin for Biden of 1.9 as of November 2nd. All of these are the final margins based on an average, of polls. For Georgia, there's a 1.2 margin. For Florida, a 2.5 margin. Now, these margins are based on steady histories of a Biden lead in Florida and in North Carolina for a very long time. And in Georgia, the 1.2 lead in Georgia that Biden has, though small, it's been steady now for more than a month at roughly that level, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, or maybe 1.0. It doesn't deviate much. There aren't wild fluctuations. Between November 2nd and also November 3rd, since a lot of the votes are in from these states anyway, it is unlikely that Trump will be able to make up a point or more in Georgia. He's going to lose in Georgia. The same for North Carolina. There's no chance he's going to be able to make up on that particular margin, of 1.9. Well, you might ask, in looking over these figures, what about the margin of error? I haven't talked about the margin of error. Each individual poll has a margin of error. That's true. But these are averages, of many polls. And we've looked at those averages from the viewpoint of history over a very long time. And there are no fluctuations up and down. And the concept of margin of error, that applies to a particular poll. When you see a time series of polls, a time series of averages, of polls, and they're staying in the same area over months, you're looking at some figures that are pretty rock solid. They're pretty rock solid. It's very likely that the actual margins, which show up when all the votes are counted, are going to be like these particular margins. There doesn't seem to be a chance of a flip. So Georgia has 16 electoral votes, North Carolina 15 electoral votes, Florida 29 electoral votes. Doesn't look like Trump can flip these states, or that he has flipped these states. After all, the campaigning is now over. Doesn't look like he has flipped these states. There's also no way he can flip Florida by 2.5 points. Not unless something systematic intervenes. Some rigging of the polls, essentially machine rigging, some intervention that stops the counting. Those things could change this, of course. Those kinds of happenings can change this. We have to wait to see if we experience those kinds of happenings. But I think at this point in the game, they're unlikely to happen in these three states. Of the three states, they're probably most likely to happen and have the effect of undermining the likely plurality for Biden in Georgia, because I think they have better control of the electoral machinery from the Republican Party in that particular state right now. Now you'll notice, for Ohio, with 18 electoral votes, that's based on a margin that's very slim. It's a 0.8 margin in favor of the Republicans. And you can tell who it's a margin for because I've given it the color of the Republicans, okay, red color. So I've characterized North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida as blue states, and Ohio, okay, as red. But it's only red by minus 0.8. Why do I have a question mark there? Because when you look at the history over some period of time, you look at the history of these averages of polls, Ohio is fluctuating from Biden to Trump, from Trump to Biden. On November 2nd, and for a couple of days before that, it was in Biden's camp. It is possible, though. It is possible. There were past history, there was a net shift of 2 points in those polls over a single day. In other words, Trump was ahead by 1, and the next day Biden was ahead by 1. When it happened was between September 23rd and September 24th. So it's unlikely we would have a similar shift. In other words, it's likely Trump is going to win that state. But there's a question mark about it. There still probably is a chance for a flip over to Biden. There's also, of course, a chance for a flip because Ohio has been known for strange goings-on, okay, with elections in the past. However, Mike DeWine is the governor, okay, of Ohio now. And he seems to be a Republican who plays it but relatively straight compared to other Republicans. And he and Trump have been at odds over the coronavirus. What I'm saying is, it's perfectly possible that he favors Biden in this particular election. And we've had particularly heavy turnout today in Cuyahoga County. That, of course, is Cleveland. There doesn't seem to be an effort to suppress the vote in that particular county. Interesting, right? We have to see what happens there, okay, in Ohio. But that's still flippable, and it's flippable in Biden's favor. Now there's Pennsylvania. Biden's ahead by 4.7. And we've had fluctuations in Pennsylvania because it's been as low as 4.5 for Biden. Sometimes he's been up as high as 8 points or 9 points, even once, I believe, in Pennsylvania. So he's lost a lot in Pennsylvania over a period of time, but it hasn't been a precipitous decline in Pennsylvania. It's been very gradual over the last month. There's been a decline. And he's not at his low point yet. He was at 4.5 some earlier time. He's at 4.7 now. Again, we have the average of polls and we have the history of polls. We have the time series, which doesn't fluctuate that rapidly or by that much. So if the interference with the absentee ballots does not succeed in Pennsylvania, there's no systematic interference of that kind, and there's no systematic interference that comes about through counting the ballots, and there's no machine rigging in Pennsylvania, it's very likely Biden will hang on to that particular lead. Since I can't assess what the likelihood is of these other things happening in Pennsylvania right now, other than interference with the absentee vote, I don't think the interference with the absentee vote would have the effect of swinging Pennsylvania by 4.7 points. I think it's still pretty obvious that it's going to go to Biden. I don't think it's a flippable state without something really drastic happening there now in terms of a systematic kind of interference in Pennsylvania, completely stopping the vote. Okay. So now Texas. Okay, Texas. Even though the margin is small in Texas, where Biden is behind by 1.1, and even though we've had this heavy turnout inside of Texas, the average of polls still has that 1.1 in favor of Trump. And that has been a steady lead in that sort of neighborhood for Trump now for almost the whole race in Texas. That's another state where there's no fluctuation there. I'm sorry, we've had a heavy lead, have that kind of lead in favor of Trump, not in favor, okay, of Biden. And that particular lead has been pretty constant. Sometimes it goes to 1.8, sometimes it goes down a little, sometimes it goes up higher, 2 or 3 points for Trump. But historically, that's a lead that's not falling seriously in a single day. Now, maybe something could happen where the heavy early vote in Texas falls strongly for Biden, and the heavy election day vote, which is supposed to be tending towards Trump, or that some people stay home. It's possible for various reasons on election day, people stay home. It's not always due to lack of enthusiasm. It's just due to random factors that affect individuals and that lower the percentage of vote. We don't know how important that's going to be compared to the very, very heavy turnout in Texas from the early vote that we've seen, which I understand was approaching 10 million votes now. In fact, across the country, 100 million votes were cast actually prior to Election Day. But people are predicting 160 to 162 million votes. So 3/5 of the votes, 60% of the vote is coming in before Election Day, countrywide. In Texas, the percentage may even be higher. It may be 70 to 75% of the ultimate totals in the state of Texas. So it's possible that the margin of 1.1 in favor of Trump could be wiped out in Biden's favor by this very heavy early vote. But I don't know how to assess that. I don't know how to assess what impact that could have. So as of now, I'm still considering it as unflippable for Biden. Okay, I may be wrong about that, but it still seems to me that even if by a small margin, it is solid for Trump. Now we come down to Iowa, which is the last state and the least important. It's only 6 electoral votes. I put a question mark on it because we've had the fluctuations there. Sometimes Biden's in the lead, sometimes Trump is in the lead, sometimes Biden, sometimes Trump. Over the last few days, Trump has gone into the lead. Some of that lead is due to one poll. It's an A+ rated poll by Ann Seltzer, which is considered to be the gold standard, okay, in Iowa. Okay, so it's given a heavy weight in the polling averages. But this time there have been questions about the methodology used in that poll. For example, she did not weight the vote, by educational level, which turned out to be one reason why the 2016 votes were in error. So most of the pollsters are weighting by education now in order to compensate for that. But for some reason, Seltzer did not make that particular move. And there were some other methodological problems with our poll at this point. There was a big discussion on Twitter where she got really questioned due to the methodological foundations of her poll. So there's that. That was affecting the final polling average, giving Trump a lead of 1.3 in that particular state. We don't know what, a heavy turnout, on election day, which way that would swing. I think that that vote is probably still flippable. I'm not sure. I can't say how flippable it is. I point out to you that both of the flippable states are flippable in favor of Joe Biden. But I also point out there are only 24 electoral votes. If I assume that those 24 go to Trump and he gets Texas also, that means he gets 62 electoral votes. If I add up those votes coming from the solid state, we have North Carolina 15, Georgia 16, Florida 29, and Pennsylvania 20. That represents a total, of 80 votes, if I've added correctly. 49, 16, 65, and 15, right. That is 80 electoral votes. If we go back to, if we stop sharing this, and we go back to the map here, let me share the map again. If we go back to the map again, that 271 to 125 margin that Biden has now becomes Texas going red, Iowa going red, Ohio going red, Pennsylvania blue, North Carolina blue, Georgia blue, and Florida blue. And the final counts are Joe Biden 351 and Donald Trump 187. A very solid win, though not entirely a landslide for Joe Biden. Close to a landslide in the popular vote, most probably, but closer in the Electoral College, but not so close that there's any basis for contestation. Even if a challenge should change the 20 electoral votes in Pennsylvania to red, it's still 331 for Biden to 207 for Trump, a substantial win for Joe Biden. So I see Biden as the victor in this particular race. There's even a chance that with Florida, Georgia, North Carolina coming in with early results, that might even have an effect on the Texas election today, because Texas comes in later. I think Texas comes in roughly 9 Eastern time. Let me look at that again. Texas comes in at 9 Eastern time. And results from the other states are going to be coming in by 7:30 Eastern time. So there's an hour and a half until Texas closes. If it looks like Biden has already won the election by then, that the outcome is already determined by then, that could have a discouraging effect on election day voters in Texas. As well as election day voters in Arizona. As well. So this may be an election which is determined early, not late, as is expected and hoped for by Trump, so that he can declare a victory, let's say at 9 or 10 tonight. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if he's going to have the opportunity to do that and throw everything into chaos. But of course, we have to see. We don't know whether that's going to happen or not. So I hope you liked this particular video. It was not a particularly short take, as these short takes go, but I hope you liked it anyway. And I felt I had to give it before the election results actually came in. So I'm going to end the broadcast now, and I'll see you later tonight, much later tonight, probably around 8 or 8:30, to discuss, to start to discuss the results. So I'll see you for the in-depth show at that time. I'm going to end this now. Thanks.